What's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us today for episode 95 of the 1004 show. It's a Gold Yeller edition. Gold Yeller, kind of like Old Yeller, maybe, and gold dust? I don't know. Jared Jacobs is a really fascinating dude. I met him because I saw a tweet of something that he was doing, which I wasn't really familiar with as an art form. Now, it's called stop motion animation. And so basically, he uses miniature figures and does a bunch of really small increments through pictures to make a video. And so he's done stuff like recreating the Villanova versus UNC final shot in the national championship game. Some big wrestling moments. He's a big hockey fan, so he's done that as well. And he takes this and he's actually been able to sell them to big brands. Really fascinating stuff. He now resides in Boise, Idaho, which is becoming kind of a business capital for small businesses. And we talk a little bit about that, a lot about stop motion. This stuff is really incredible, how it just happens, who his inspiration is, and a ton more, and how he was able to not only grow his family, but also to leave his job to pursue what he loves. So, without further ado, 95th edition of the 1004 show, Gold Yeller, the Gold Yeller himself, Jared Jacobs. This is where I want to do like something but like stop motion, but like boom 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 boom. Whoa! That was terrible, but roll it. As a kid, what was your favorite toy to play with?
I had these wrestling figures from like the WWF in like a wrestling ring. And I think those were probably my favorite things to play with. I had like He-Man and like the Castle of Grayskull, I think was what it was called. I had that stuff too, but probably the wrestling figures were my favorite.
Were you a wrestling fan growing up or just a fan of the figures?
Yeah, I was a huge wrestling fan growing up. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and so we had kind of the minor leagues of the WWF. It was called Stampede Wrestling. It was Stu Hart was the person who owned it, and that's like Bret Hart's dad. And Owen Hart and Bruce Hart, like the whole Hart family is from there. And so all of the big wrestlers that came up in the WWF seemed like they funneled through Stampede Wrestling at some point. And so I don't know, I got pretty big into wrestling, and then in like junior high, me and a buddy of mine would like just rent old school VHS tapes of wrestling and just watch those, and that's kind of how we'd nerd out on the weekends.
Yep. I remember that's probably how I did it too. So you can see the belt. It's part of our brand. So I actually have a championship belt there. Do you still watch wrestling now?
No, I
Okay.
once it went to WWE, I kind of lost interest. I don't know why. My sister still watches it, or I don't know if she watches it anymore, but she watched it for a long time with like The Rock and like China and all those people. But yeah, once they kind of transitioned, I think I kind of lost interest.
Yeah. I remember when I first started watching it, I believe I just was at Blockbuster or something when Blockbuster was a thing. And I would go and I'd see this video and I'm like, oh, I'm going to rent that. And it would end up being wrestling. And so I'd watch that. So that's how I used to have to watch WrestleManias and SummerSlams and all that crazy stuff. And so kind of like you, I stopped watching for a long time. But I did pick it back up when the network came back. And so what's interesting is I like kind of long form documentaries, and some of the stuff that they do is some long form documentaries. So cool stuff. Who was your favorite wrestler growing up? Bret Hart?
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Got it.
I really liked Bret Hart. Actually, I was in a play in high school, and it was I don't even remember what the name of the play was, but I was like this kind of hoity-toity guy from New York, and I got flipped over this Russian guy's back, and so Stu Hart was actually the guy that came and showed me how to take a fall. So I had to like flip and then land with my feet first, And that was something that I always remembered. And like Bruce Hart and like Owen Hart were like phys ed teachers kind of on the side. And so sometimes they would come and be like our PE teachers in our class. So that was always really cool too.
I'm terrified to take a bump. I see how they do it, and it looks terrifying. So I'll just watch instead of being a wrestler.
Oh, I love it.
Did Brett screw Brett?
What's that?
Do you remember like way back when Bret Hart spit on Vince McMahon? Were you watching at that point? So the whole thing is always that Bret screwed Bret, or that's what Vince McMahon always said.
Bret Michaels, yeah.
No, not Bret Michaels. No, Bret Hart. So they took the belt from Shawn.
Oh, Shawn Michaels. Why did I say Bret Michaels?
Yeah. So Shawn Michaels. Yeah. And so Vince always said that Bret screwed Bret. Is that a lie, or do you think Vince screwed Bret?
I think Vince screwed Bret.
Go.
I think Bret's still bitter about it. I actually met Bret in 2003 up in Calgary when the Flames were in the Stanley Cup Finals. We took a road trip up there and somehow finagled our way into the Saddle Dome, and he was in our section, so he was like super cool, like was like signing autographs and like just hanging out talking to us. And so that was pretty cool too. But yeah, I think Vince screwed Bret for sure.
You know, they say he self-proclaims to be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. I think that's
that's right. Important. I have a 6-year-old son, and we wrestle all the time. He actually has a title belt too, and I'll put him in the sharpshooter every now and then.
I love it. So there's a lot of miniatures behind you. That's really kind of your claim to fame, if you will. What would you call those things? Are they Legos or miniatures? Like, what are they?
Yeah, so they're the stuff. I don't know if you can even see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Okay. Oh, there you go. Cool.
Yeah, they're just called minifigures. So these ones are Lego. The hockey rink is something that's called Oyo, O-Y-O. And they're kind of interchangeable. Oyo is who has licensing for like the NHL and MLB and NCAA. And so I usually use those when I have to, like when I'm making hockey ones, I like the Oyo stuff, but then I like the Lego minifigures the best. And so that's what I use for like the crowd shots and things like that.
Do stores sell that, or you have to get them specialty made online?
Some of them... So it's kind of a mixture of both. I'll take minifigures apart and put them together, and I'll put like jerseys on them, just to kind of make it more authentic to whatever play I'm recreating. But typically I just get them from stores, and there's a couple websites that I'll go to get them as well.
Very cool. So you take and recreate these minifigures into famous times, sometimes in sports and wrestling. Kind of, what's the genesis of that? How did you kind of say, hey, maybe this is something, I like these miniatures, but I can storytell with them too? Kind of, what's the genesis there?
So stop motion animation was kind of what got me into this. But I didn't really know how to do it. I know that I wanted to do stuff with stop animation, but I wasn't really sure what. And so I started making them just on my phone. And they looked really bad. Like it looked like a 12-year-old was producing them. But it was actually a grown man producing them. And I just kind of got better and better at it. I remember one of the first ones that I put out was back during the show Breaking Bad. And some of the actors from the show like retweeted it and put it out on their Instagram and shared it. And so I kind of got like a little cult following from that show, and people were just like, you need to make more of these. And I was like, oh, okay. And then once I got into sports, so that was about 5 years ago. And then I got into doing sports ones about 2 years ago. I did a golf one of a golfer that went to Boise State who's Canadian named Graham Dolette. And he retweeted it, and that was kind of what got me into Twitter as well. Was I knew that he was on Twitter, and so I was like, oh, I'll tweet it at him and see if he can see it. And then when he retweeted it, like some of the other people on the PGA started retweeting it, and then I was like, oh, I might be onto something here. And so the next one that I did, like a week later, was a Tiger Woods video at the Masters on the 16th hole. And that one went like crazy viral. Like,
did he retweet it?
No, but pretty much any like CBS Sports, like ESPN, it was all over the place. And like I was getting like requests to be on like shows in like Australia, and it was all over the world. It was just really weird. And then that's when like big companies started reaching out and saying, "Hey, can you do these in football or can you do these in basketball?" And so I just kind of had to sink or swim. I had to figure it out really quick, and I got some professional animating software because I was just making them on my phone, and it just kind of like I kind of fell into it. I wasn't really expecting for this to turn into my career.
Love it when it happens. So, what is stop motion animation?
So it's just taking a picture and then moving them just a little bit and then taking another picture, and it usually consists of like 300 or 400 pictures for like a 30-second video, where it's just like you just move their arms and you move their legs just a little bit. So it's kind of like a flip book, like you'd see like old school Walt Disney stuff. It's kind of like that, only it's yeah, just picture after picture, and then it just kind of all flows together.
Yeah, I've seen your work. It's really really cool stuff.
Thank you.
So the strategy to, I guess, get exposure on some of these medias like Twitter or Instagram, is it just the tag people that are involved in it, or is there a different strategy as well?
Um, so that originally was kind of the strategy too. Actually, I don't even think I tagged anybody in the Breaking Bad stuff. I think I used hashtags. So I'm not sure how they found it. Um, but then I started kind of implementing that strategy where if I wanted somebody to see it, I would tweet it at them. Or I mean, it doesn't always work, but it seemed to work pretty regularly for me. And as I got better and better at it, people actually started reaching out to me to make them. So that was pretty cool.
Well, and you're probably tweeting them or sending them something that no one else has ever done. So it's very unique
Right.
and different. It's not like, hey, like, just give me a retweet because I wrote 10 words down. Instead,
Yeah,
you've.
I make sure that it's definitely not spammy. Like if I'll send out one tweet, and if it like if they don't see it or if nothing happens from it, I'm not like constantly tweeting at different people. People have asked me that before. They're like, "How do you get this exposure?" And I'm like, "I don't really know. Like if you make good stuff, then people just kind of find it, I guess. I don't know. I I really wish I knew kind of the algorithm, if you will, to getting more exposure, but it just kind of came to me, and then I think I kind of got spoiled where I was like everything I made I thought was going to be like a viral success, which doesn't happen, but it happened way more than I thought it would, and anytime I thought it was going to die down, it kept getting bigger and bigger, and then finally I was like, I got to quit my job if I'm going to keep doing this, and so I've been self-employed for a year now.
Very cool. So we're definitely going to talk about that transition. But before we get to that, so storytelling to what do you think storytelling is, and where do you think it was missing before you started doing this?
So, I mean, with this one, it's not really this storytelling aspect of it. I mean, I love telling stories, and through video, I think is the best way to do that. But this is just kind of recreating stories that had already happened. So that's kind of been what my niche has turned into, is just recreating famous plays and then putting a little bit of my own twist and style to it. Sometimes I'll put little Easter eggs into the crowd, and people seem to like that. It resonates with people. But just paying attention to the tiny details, I think I think being detail oriented with stories is how you kind of build those. I don't know how you play on people's emotions, I guess you would say. Just telling the story in a nostalgic way too with Lego. Most people played with Lego at some point in their life, and so it kind of resonates with them. And so I think that's part of it.
Very interesting. So, how did you finally decide that it was time to quit your current job and go all in and do it on your own?
The demand was getting to be pretty crazy. So when the Tiger Woods one went viral, like Pinehurst Resort reached out to me and wanted me to do a Payne Stewart one, and so I was like, wait, can I monetize this? And so then Big Ten Network reached out to me and wanted me to do like a play for each week to promote their BTN tailgate that they had. And then Bleacher Report wanted me to do one for the NBA Finals, and it just kind of steamrolled. And next thing I knew, like NBC Universal's reaching out to me to do stuff for like the British Open, and I'm just like, I mean, I literally just create these in the corner of our living room, and like it's kind of become my studio now. And I film at night, so I was filming last night, so I've been up all night, and that's why I probably have bags under my eyes, because I have to film at night because I have 3 kids, and so I can't have them running around with stop motion. The camera can't move unless you want it to move, and typically you don't want the camera to move because you want to keep the camera still, and that's kind of what makes it look more smooth.
So you said, can I monetize this? So what was the first one that you decided that you were going to ask, can I get paid for this? And then how did you start to price it?
Pinehurst was the first one, and they didn't have money to pay for it. So I was like, well, I like to golf, so I've always wanted to, and I actually went to the US Open there in 2014. And so it was kind of just a weird circumstance where they were one of the first ones to reach out to me. And so I was like, I like going golfing, so I'll do it in exchange for a couple of rounds at Pinehurst. And so me and my cousin went out there last year, and they took care of us and put us up in the hotel, and just bartered my way into it. And then with Big Ten Network, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to get paid for this. Like, if this is taking me away from my day job, so if I'm going to do this and stay up every night making these, then I was pretty much burning the candle at both ends when I was doing the Big Ten Network stuff, because I was still working my regular day job. And so with them, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna need money for this. And so I kind of left it up to them, and they came back and they were like, how about this much? And then I was like, well, I also like to go to football games, so can we maybe put that into the contract? And so they flew me out to go see a game at Michigan, and then they flew me out to the Big Ten championship. So that was pretty cool too. And so it's just kind of spiraled from there. And then I just kind of, depending on what it is and what they want, I kind of price it accordingly. But I don't really know what my pricing strategy is. I just kind of, I have kind of a set, like, I'll charge this much for like 1 second. But if it's a football recreation, like, that takes a lot more time than, say, like a basketball one, but just because you have like 22 guys on the field, and some of the crowd stuff that I do gets pretty labor intensive. And so it really depends on what they want. If it's just like one person talking, like one little Lego guy talking, then I charge differently. And I actually did a piece that wasn't even Lego related at all for some of my friends that have a YouTube channel. And I just animated like little plastic fruit. It's a channel called Convos with My 2-year-old. And they used it in one of theirs. And so they had like a title sponsor, like Geico was like sponsoring it. And so they had money coming in from that. And so I was like, oh, cool. They're like, we could pay you this much. And I'm like, awesome. That's great. And then now it's, I just kind of throw numbers out there, and sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they're like, that's too much. And then we negotiate from there. Like if it is something that I'm really passionate about doing, I try not to get caught up in the weeds of pricing. Like if they've got something to offer I know they can't afford what I charge, then I'm like, well, you guys have other things that you can bring to the table. And so we kind of go from there. So I don't know if it's the best business model, but it's worked for me so far.
Well, some of those things, those experiences are going to cost you thousands of dollars too. So if you can get them, like I don't know if you've done a deal with WWE or if you've been to WrestleMania or anything like that, but I mean, that's an expensive ticket,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the Super Bowl this year was going for $5,000 a ticket. If you could somehow get something like that for that, or like some big events, I mean, it would make sense. So what was
Look,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
what was your job before you quit?
I was a marketing director at a lumber supply company.
So you weren't doing
So
stuff like this for them, or were you?
I actually did a few stop motion pieces. I was doing a lot of video content for them. I think that's kind of why they hired me, because I had like experience doing stuff with YouTube, and I worked with some YouTubers that had pretty good exposure, and so I think that was kind of what got my foot in the door. And then I just started storytelling through video, and that I kind of became passionate about it. And but I never thought that this would take off. Like, I never thought I would quit my day job for making Lego videos. It's actually kind of weird telling people what I do for a living when they're like, "Oh, what do you do for work?" And I'm like, "I play with Legos." That's pretty much it.
But then they see it and they're like, "Oh, that's really cool."
Yeah, but they look at me cross-eyed when I first say it. They're like, "Huh? How do you do that?"
So I just read a book called Anomaly: How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd, and it's really about finding what you love and doing that. And I feel like you've really been able to do that. And I think so many people are too afraid to figure out, how do I make a living off of what I love? And so I commend you for doing it and doing something that you love and making money from it. So people that are afraid to a lot of people are afraid to ask for money, though. A lot of people are afraid to, they get this email or this call from the Big Ten Network or whoever from Pinehurst, and they're just like, yeah, I'll do it for free. What made you realize, and what was the strategy that you knew that you had to make money doing it?
I think just having a family, and it's taking time from my family. And so at the time when I was working a regular job and then doing this at night, I didn't get a lot of sleep. And so my wife and I talked about it, and she's like, you got to make money. Like, you got to make something doing this. You can't just do this for free for the rest of your life. Even though I love it, and I probably would do it for free. I've done a lot of projects where I just put them out there. And those are typically the ones that get me more jobs. If it's something that I'm passionate about, it seems to resonate with a lot more people. Even if it's not something that resonates with the masses, like if I like it, then I'm going to make it. And so I've had some pretty interesting opportunities come just from putting stuff out there that is that's close to me. But as far as like how what how to ask, I was kind of nervous to ask for money up front too, just because I was like, these guys, what if I ask for too much, and then we don't actually get a deal, and I want to work with these guys. So I think it's kind of touch and go. It's really about relationships though, and forging those relationships and building on them. And if you do good work, they usually come back and want you to do more. So
Very cool. What is Jared Jacobs the best in the world at?
What am I best in the world at? I've got like this thing for getting into places where I don't really belong. Like um, like the Gary Vaynerchuk event for ClickFunnels, like that they just wanted like big influencers for that. One of my friends told me that Gary was coming to town, and it was like a private event, and I've been a huge Gary Vaynerchuk fan for like probably 3 years now. And so I was like, I have to get into that somehow. And he's like, yeah, you probably need a bigger following, because they're just bringing in like really fancy people and like huge influencers for this. And so I was
Even
like, well,
just in the crowd type of thing? Or
yeah,
what? Okay.
yeah, it was like a viral video launch. And so they brought people from like all over the world for it.
Got it.
It was actually kind of weird to see some of the people. I was like, what are these guys doing in Boise? But somehow I finagled my way in there. My friend knew that I was big into it, and he got like a +1. And so he's like, hey, do you want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. And then when Gary opened up a Q&A, I just got up there and thanked him because he's been a big reason why I've been able to turn this into something that is a career for me now. And so I just wanted to thank him. And I've consumed so much of his content that I kind of know how, like, I guess I reverse engineered the way that he thinks. And so I just got up and thanked him. And then I said, if you ever want to play bubble hockey, I'll destroy you, because I know he's super competitive. And even though I'm not like the best bubble hockey player in the world, I knew that that would kind of get his blood pumping. And so there was a spot down the street I was going to take him to play if he wanted to. I really just wanted to spend more time with him. I didn't really care about asking him for business advice or anything like that. I was just like, I like this guy, and it'd be cool to play bubble hockey with somebody as fancy as him. And
So did he go down the street with you?
no, he actually flew me out to New York.
Oh,
It was really weird. He's like, you know what I'm going to do? He's like, because based on what you said, I'm going to fly you out to New York. And he's like, I'll pay for your flight and the hotel. And you can spend a day at VaynerMedia. And during that day, we'll play bubble hockey and we'll see what's up. So I just got back like 2 weeks ago from New York.
wow.
But I lost.
You lost?
Yeah, I didn't win.
Did you let him win?
Maybe. No, no, I really wanted to win. But it's not like I was practicing, I was just like, I'm just going to go there and hopefully I win. And, but it was really just for the experience. Like, people pay a lot of money just to get any kind of time with Gary. So I was like, the fact that some regular Joe Schmo like me is getting like flown out there by him was just like surreal for me. So that was a pretty cool experience.
I like that. That's a really interesting thing, that you're really good at getting into places where you're not supposed to be. That's the best answer I've probably heard yet for that question. Surrounding yourself around someone like a Gary Vaynerchuk, whether it just be consuming that information online or actually being able to be there in person with him, like, what are you looking for when you're consuming from someone like that?
For me, pretty much it's just being around like-minded people like that kind of give you the permission to kind of be an anomaly, to go against the grain and do what other people aren't doing. Like, I think Gary always says that if you want to be an anomaly, you have to act like an anomaly. So you can't just do what everyone else does in order to stand out. You kind of have to make your own way, and definitely go where the masses aren't. And that's kind of always worked in my favor. But yeah, that's something that resonated with me really quite a bit, actually. And so that's kind of turned into my mantra, where I just kind of go where the puck's going to be, like Wayne Gretzky said. That's what the great players do. Not saying that I'm a great player, but I do play a lot of hockey, and I like to go where I think the puck's going to be instead of going where it is.
Love it. GoldYeller, where's that name come from?
So when I first started doing YouTube, I would do like rap videos every week, and we called it Freestyle Friday. And like my two daughters would be like my little backup dancers. And I was kind of wanting to figure out like a rap name, because you have to have a rap name if you're going to be a rapper. And it was, I don't know how I came up with GoldYeller. I was starting to get older, because I'm 39 now. I think I started doing the rap videos like about 7 years ago. And I was old for, starting a rap career, if you want to call it that. And I like gold, and is synonymous with rap videos. And so instead of Old Yeller, I made GoldYeller, and then I had all the handles like on Instagram and Twitter, everything like that. So it kind of branded myself that way. And then I made so after about 3 years of doing Freestyle Friday, I made an actual like music, like an actual song that I could like sell on iTunes, and like made a video around it. It was like a gangster rap about farming. It was called Farm Boy Flow. It's on it. I got like 3,000 views on it. And so I was just like, maybe people don't want to hear me rap. I don't know. And um, so I, so I kind of gave up on the rap thing after I put out my first single, and it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. But that's where the name GoldYeller came from, and then it's kind of just stuck. But yeah, it all started from my rapping days.
GoldYeller. I like that though. So when you threw in the towel on that, was that a really hard decision to make?
No, that was something I just did on the side, and so I had a friend, the only person I knew that was doing things on YouTube. I reached out to him, and when I was in LA, I went and met with him, and I was like, I kind of want to make YouTube videos, but I don't really know like what to do, like, or who to reach out to. Like I didn't have any experience in like editing in Premiere Pro. I didn't even have like a DSLR camera at the time. And he said, if that's what you want to do, he's like, you need to go to VidCon. And so I went to VidCon like 5 years ago for the first time. And that was another thing. I just started sneaking into like the parties where like the big influencers were, and I had no business being there. And so people, they see you around and they're kind of like, who is this guy? And then it's kind of like the intrigue sets in, and they want to find out more about you. And then when they find out that you're just a regular Joe, they're like, how did you get in here?
It was your name, GoldYeller. That's how you got in there, I bet.
That probably had something to do with it. I don't know. I think it's just like a blind confidence where you just, I'm not dishonest about how I get into these things. Like I legit like will just ask people. I'm like, is there any way that I can get into this party even though it's only for? And sometimes they say no, but somehow I can get myself into pretty much anything that I want to if you set your mind to it. But yeah, sometimes they do say no, but most of the time, where there's a will, there's a way.
Love it. So you have a decently popular YouTube channel. That's where I believe I met you. And then your Instagram as well. What are some strategies that you've used that aren't what most people tell to kind of grow some sort of social platform?
A lot of it is providing value to other people that have a bigger audience. If there's a way that you can provide value to them, that's probably the best strategy, I would say. A lot of people will come in and be spammy, and they just, they'll comment in your YouTube and leave like links of their videos, and that's not a very good strategy. Really, it's just putting stuff out there, even if it's, even if you think it's worth getting paid for the stuff that you make. Sometimes you got to put that stuff out there for free, and if the right people see it, it kind of comes to you. It used to be it's not what you know, it's who you know, but now it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So if people know who you are, then it's crazy the opportunities that come along with that. And sometimes I am just awestruck with who actually knows who I am and who follows me. I'm like, I don't know how these people even find me, like, and I don't know why they keep following me. But I think that's just kind of self-deprecating on my part, where I don't think I'm a big deal, even if I am a big deal to some people. I never really consider myself a big deal.
Sure. So when you say providing value to people, that word value is thrown out a lot. What are some examples on how you can, in a non-spammy kind of way, provide value to someone?
I mean, it depends on what your strengths are. I would, if say you're a rapper that wants to get your music out there, if it's good music and you like send it out to you hit up other YouTubers that you like, they're looking for free music, and you're like, hey, if you want to use this in your vlog, I would love it if you'd use it. And just kind of putting it out into the universe. That seemed to be a pretty good strategy for people I know that are into music. With me, it was, kind of playing on people's egos. When I tweeted that at Graham Dillette, when you're a professional golfer, you have a little bit of an ego, and everybody has an ego. And I don't mean that in a negative way. But if you're playing on their egos, it provides value to them. The way that I got Gary Vaynerchuk to follow me on Instagram like 2 years ago was I made a little Lego video of his Ask Gary V show. I didn't think anything would come from it, but then he started following me on Instagram, and I was like, this is crazy. And this was before he'd blown up to what he is now. So I think getting in early is also a good thing. If you find somebody online that you kind of vibe with and you think you can provide them value, just reach out to them and say, hey, sometimes just saying, this is what I do. If there's anything, if we could ever collaborate on something. I mean, the way that you reached out to me, you're like, hey, I like the video that you just did. I watched a bunch of your stuff. Do you want to be on my podcast? I'm like, sure. I mean, I don't know if it's a big podcast. It doesn't really matter to me. Like, it's more exposure. And then you kind of siphon that audience a little bit, and not siphon in a way where you're taking away from, but like you're giving yourself more exposure. And even if it's not a huge podcast, it's usually a good idea to say yes to those types of things. But I mean, you're providing value for me where you're giving me a platform to tell my story. And I don't know who follows you. Like, there may be people, I mean, there might be something that comes from this where it's like, I had no idea that was going to come from this. So we kind of, me having a story to tell provides value to you, or you have content for your podcast. So yeah, just kind of reaching out to people and not being afraid of people saying no. It's the same thing with sales. You don't say no for the other person, like make the other person say no.
Yeah, I mean, this is a strategy that I have, reaching out to people that I see their stuff. And just like you said, like, so I saw, I think I'd seen a tweet of yours about like a Michigan video or something. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So then I started watching it, and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I'd love to learn this guy's story. And I know that I ask questions that most people don't ask, or at least I think I do.
Right.
And so I like to hear more about who they are. Like, the name that you have, your rap video, putting your kids on YouTube and things like that. Like, these are all different stories that most people probably don't know about you, right? And maybe the rap video piece, but it's just, I believe that everyone has a story, and not all of them get out. I've been on dozens, probably hundreds of podcasts, and been interviewed by a bunch of people, and usually they send over 5 or 6 questions, and it's the same 5 or 6 questions over and over again. Like with me, like I gave you like a little bit of a brief and saying this is generally kind of what we'll talk about. But honestly, I probably haven't even done one of those questions yet because it's unscripted. I want to hear what you say and then trying to feed off of that, because usually if you're passionate about something or what's in your mind right now, you're going to be talking about that. So how can I get that out, because it's who you are, and I think that's important. Like, I didn't know
Yeah,
you were.
no, I think it's a great format. And yeah, like you said, I've been interviewed in a lot of places too. Like, and typically it's the same questions, and you just kind of go through the motions and give the same answers. But if it's something that's like an organic, I think that plays really well on a podcast too, where people are like, why do I want to listen to this guy? I've never heard of this guy before.
Yeah, I look at it as, if I'm getting coffee with you or getting lunch or a beer or something, like the first time, like, what's that conversation going to be like? And that's what this is, right? And so sometimes
Right.
I actually have relationships with people that I've known for years on the show, and I'm like, hey, like, so I have to like bring it back to like, tell me about this story that I know about. And usually it's stories that people don't even know about,
Right.
where someone went through something so dramatic that they don't want the world to know, but because they feel comfortable with me, I get it out of them. So it's pretty interesting. I really like that piece though about how to kind of build a channel, by providing value, but really playing on their egos. Because you're right, it doesn't matter who it is. Everyone has an ego, and everyone wants to feel wanted, wants to feel good about themselves. And so I think most people I think everyone wants the end result, like to grow bigger, but they're not willing to put in the time to figure out how can they stroke that ego. So I love it.
For sure. Yeah. And when I say play on people's egos, it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest person out there. Like, if you're wanting to grow your YouTube channel, you don't have to reach out to like Casey Neistat. I mean, that's a good tactic too, because if Casey Neistat does put you on, all of a sudden your life has changed, So it's funny to see people that he puts on and cosigns, how they just exponentially grow. But even, I mean, if it's not something that, like, if they don't make content that you're passionate about, then it's probably going to fall flat. So it's not just reaching for the stars. It's also connecting with people that are kind of at your level or maybe a little higher than your level or even a little lower, and collaboration is key on all those types of things. I think if you can collaborate, you can definitely grow.
I just learned about Casey maybe a month or two ago, and so I have a journalism degree by trade. I don't do any of that stuff. Some people say, well, the show is journalism, or you're interviewing people. But I worked in TV news for a while. I was a photojournalist, sports anchor, and a bunch of other things. And that dude has a really good style for him. And he, even if he sits in front of a camera, he'll find ways to kind of do random edits by just moving the camera or putting his hand over. And I'm just like, wow, this guy's good. I mean, he has several million followers or subscribers as well. I mean, so it's interesting.
Yeah,
So
he's a phenomenal storyteller. He's actually the reason that I found out about Gary Vaynerchuk. Was I started following Casey way before I started following Gary, and then Gary siphoned that attention that he knew Casey had because they were friends before either one of them got big, and so having Casey put Gary on was how I found him, and I think how a lot of people found him, and he's just kind of skyrocketed once Casey stopped doing daily vlogs. Gary was like, well, we're going to turn this Daily V thing into an actual daily thing now. And he kind of saw the white space and he went for it. And he's grown exponentially since then. But he's not necessarily a vlogger. Like he runs a pretty big business, and people just film him. And he's found a way where, he's got D-Rock and Babin following him around everywhere he goes. And they're great storytellers. And he knows how to tell a story too, and I think storytelling is key to that too, to growing an audience.
So knowing that Casey positions himself, and one of the things that he leverages is the old HBO show, or Gary Vee, who says that he took his dad's wine business from $3 to $60 million. How do you, Jared Jacobs, position yourself to leverage old wins to get new ones?
I'll probably leverage this going out to VaynerMedia for a while now. Like I put a video together. Actually, my friend flew out there on his own dime. He's like, I'll come film this for you because he was a really good videographer. And so he put a video together for me, and he got access to Gary Vaynerchuk that way. Even if it was just to film him, through me, providing value to me, he was able to come with me. And I had like maybe 15, 20 people reach out to me wanting to be a part of it, where they were just like, yeah, I'll come film you. But this guy I had worked with in the past, and I knew he was really good at what he did. And so when he said that he wanted to come film me, I was like, absolutely. Yeah, you can come for sure. I'm like, you can stay at my hotel, like whatever we need to do. If you want to come out, I was like, I can't pay for you to come out there because I don't have that kind of capital, but if he had just graduated school, and he was like, yeah, I can. He's like, I can afford it. It's like $300 to fly out to New York, and so I just paid for his food when he was there. So I was really grateful for him.
So he was providing value for you, right? I mean, so he did the exact same thing that you're telling people to do. He said, you know what? I know that this guy is getting an opportunity. You are getting this opportunity to go see this big brand, this big personality, and I want to be associated with that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't know how I can do this. I don't know how I can get this opportunity, or how someone else did. Like, raise your hand, right? The thing that I tell people all the time is, if you don't raise your hand, you will never get anywhere. You saying that you asked Gary a question or something like that, like you raised your hand. And so every big thing that's ever happened to me is because I raised my hand. And I didn't know where I was going to go because of these opportunities. But if you don't put yourself in the position to be able to raise your hand, you're not going to be able to be further. And so people like you and I that go to bat for ourselves, that's why we're getting in front of more people.
Right, and I think you have to be your own number one fan too. Like, nobody's gonna be your hype man. Like, I don't have a hype man that I can bring with me. So sometimes you kind of have to brag about yourself. But you also, you kind of want to do it in a humble way. When they talk about humble brag, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense because you're bragging and you're being humble about it. But, if it's not just about you, I think I think you can kind of sneak those things in there where you're like, oh yeah, I did this or I did that, and and you can let people know, because otherwise they're probably not going to look into it. But once they're like, oh, this guy's been on Sports Center a few times, like, why? He's not an athlete. Why would Sports Center want him? And so then they'll look into you and they'll be like, oh, a quick Google search, and all of a sudden, like, I've never spent any money on SEO, but if you type in Jared Jacobson Lego, like, some of my stuff's going to pop up. So I kind of let those major companies do all the SEO work for me. Like I said, I don't even have a website. Like with social media, it's like, what do I need a website for? Like, that's my Instagram page is pretty much my website.
It's the credibility check, right? It's you taking
Right.
past wins and saying, hey, I've done this. And then people, because you have to stand out quickly, right? And people associate credibility and fame, fortune, even if you aren't those things, with big brands that already have. And so you leveraging the VaynerMedia thing, I mean, it makes sense. A lot of people have heard of Gary Vaynerchuk now. And so I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it probably will open a lot of doors for you. And it'll open a lot of doors for the guy that reached out to you saying, hey, I want to be the photographer for this.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
it's
Yeah.
just smart stuff.
Yeah.
What's something about you that I haven't asked you that most people do?
What do most people ask?
And it can be the boring stuff too.
I mean, you've asked the stuff that a lot of people ask. Like, a lot of people ask kind of how you got there, what it was that kind of put you on in the first place. Um, Most people ask how long my videos take to make. That's one that you didn't ask. Which the answer is, like, depending on what it is, it can take like anywhere from 10 hours up to like 50 hours for a 30-second piece.
So that solo Lego moving would take 10 hours to make?
Yeah, just moving us, like, maybe one or two guys. If I'm changing their heads, I've kind of developed a style where I'll make the Legos talk through all the different Lego heads that I have. Like, I don't use any special effects after the fact. I just kind of keep it old school. That's kind of my style, where it's like, if I was a 12-year-old kid and didn't know how to do any editing, how would I want this to look? I guess I kind of channel my inner child when I make these. But yeah, they take a long time. And the bigger the project, the longer it takes.
What's something on your bucket list or something that you want to do and you haven't been able to do yet?
Um, that VaynerMedia thing was quite the bucket list item for me. Now I have to shoot even higher. But I've always wanted to play hockey in like some charity hockey tournament, or just like a charity hockey game, and I want Steve Carell to be a part of that, to be one of the players. So I don't know how I'm going to make that happen, but that could be something that happens in the next, 24 to 36 months, and then you'll be like, hey, I was the guy who broke that story.
If you want an action to happen, you have to create that action, is what I always say. And so not only do you want to be in a charity hockey game, but you also want Steve Carell to be involved in it too. I mean, that's a double whammy. It would be
Yeah,
cool just to meet him.
No, I want to play hockey with him.
Well, there you go.
See, I almost want to turn this whole thing into like a gaming channel where it's like, I don't actually play like video games. Like, I play actual games, like play like Pop a Shot with like Kevin Durant or somebody, and I'd probably lose, but just to have that experience is pretty cool. Like playing bubble hockey with Gary Vaynerchuk. People are like, why did you want to play bubble hockey with him? Like, I would try and like get his attention and like actually get advice for my business. And I'm like, the advice for your business is out there. Like, it's free. You don't have to, like, you can find that, a quick internet search, you can find out how to do it. Or like, Gary gives all his stuff away for free. I'm like, I want to actually have a relationship with this person where when I'm at VidCon next year and he's there and he's like, hey, Jared, what's up? And then all of a sudden you're cool by association, and you're like, you get to sit at the cool kids table all of a sudden, and you're like, I don't know how I did that.
And you get the invite without having to sneak yourself in.
Right. Yeah. That's the main goal. Actually, I kind of like sneaking in. My next goal is to sneak into the NCAA tournament for the first 2 rounds. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I seem to
Is
be
that in
able to
Boise
sneak
this
in.
year?
Yeah, the first 2 rounds are in Boise, so they haven't been here since like 2009. And when they were here, I went to that, but I had to pay like $20 to get the ticket from a scalper, which isn't a big deal. And that can be kind of my fallback, but I want to get like a press pass or something. So that's kind of what I've set my sights on. That's kind of my most recent goal that I've made.
I probably only watch one consistent show online from like a YouTube perspective, and that's the First Be Feast Hot Ones show. I don't know if I've learned of them,
Yep.
Sean Evans, and so
Yeah, that's a really good show.
what I like about it is that it's literally just an interview show, just like this, right? But it's done in a medium, and a vehicle that's very unique and different, and it's really interesting. You know, he has good celebrities on it too, and he asks good questions, but like it's interesting to see these people like in misery.
Yeah, just sweating.
And they do such a good job with it.
Yeah, see, I found that one through Gary Vaynerchuk. When Gary went on that show, that was the first Hot Ones I'd ever seen, and I was like, oh, I actually kind of like this show. So I think turning my YouTube channel into like a gaming channel would kind of stem from Hot Ones, I would say, a little bit. I don't know that I'd be a great interviewer, but just being able to play against people, like just being a regular dude that gets to play with like big time celebrities is would be kind of a cool thing. And if we could turn it into an interview thing, that would be cool too. But I don't have the journalistic integrity that you do, that I can ask
You don't
the
you don't
great
need
questions.
you don't need journalistic integrity. You just have to care and want to. I mean, I think I ask good questions because I care. I'm interested. I want to know more. I don't want to have a list of questions beforehand. Right. I mean, I know things about people, but I want to know where the conversation. I don't want to know where the conversation is going to go beforehand. I want to have a legit, real conversation. So is that what the show would be called? Like GoldYeller, the random dude like plays video games with famous people?
Maybe.
Yeah, something like super long.
Yeah, like actually, I'd probably shorten it just for branding purposes. It'd be like I don't even know what I would GoldYeller Gaming or something like that.